governments to contain vigorously the spread of the virus. The wearing of masks, social distancing, the avoidance of crowds, and good hygiene must be accorded the highest priority in our day-to-day activities. Stay at home, stop the spread, and save lives. Madam Speaker, I beg to move.
And there you have it, folks. That was your 2021 budget presentation by Finance Minister Colm Imbert. It was just a little over 3 hours long, a 3 hour long presentation in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And as we mentioned before, we will be going immediately into our post-budget discussion. And now our time is very much limited with Dr. Botiwari and Ved Siram, who has been sitting with us in studio for the past 2 to 3 hours, taking in what the Finance Minister has to say. So let me first of all welcome Dr. Tiwari and Mr. Siram to the airwaves of U975FM. Welcome, gentlemen, once again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I wonder if I might start by making some general comments.
Yes.
And perhaps Ved can give his general impression also. And then following that, we can turn to some of the people that
Yes.
Have indicated their willingness to talk
Chat
with
with
us. The first thing that I would say is that the minister started by talking about this budget as the sixth budget of a government continuing into a second term, have gotten an election mandate. But I would say there has been a dramatic shift in perspective and policy here. And I would look at this budget as the first budget of a new dispensation with a different outlook. Now, there are a lot of things that he has said that are a rehash of things already said in previous budgets, of policies already articulated in other budgets and perhaps expanded here. But I think that there were major shifts in their approach to agriculture. I think that their approach to the retail industry in energy, that's to say the gas stations, and the freeing up of that is different from what has transpired before. And I think their approach to the two ports,
Yes.
with an attempt to bring private sector in, I think those things are very different from previous budgets. I think that also it is clear that in talking about agriculture, housing, manufacture, and digitization,
Yes.
the government is very interested in incentivizing these sectors and building confidence in them in order to get investment in those sectors. Now, whether that will be successful really depends on what I think is the key question, which is, will implementation of all the things that are required to create that climate of confidence
Yes.
for investment will it take place? And secondly, is the public service in its current configuration able to harness the energies, the capacities, the know-how, the do-how that is required to do all of these things, including, as he emphasized 2 or 3 times in the budget, this ease of doing business issue, which the private sector has really been fighting and stressing for the last 5, 6, 7 years. And therefore, I take the budget as presented with the difference in perspective and the sound of optimistic possibilities, but I also carry with me the worry of whether any of this talk is going to be translated into action and implementation and impact on recovery and development in the society. Remember, we are still in the COVID period.
Yes.
We have to navigate until the vaccine. And we also have to be prepared for the changes that are going to accelerate after the vaccine is found and begins to be distributed. So that would be my initial comment.
Right. Mr. Siram, yours, after listening to the 3-hour-long presentation by the Minister of Finance?
Well, I thought it was very optimistic, and the Minister of Finance was not his exuberant self compared to previous budget presentation, except when he came where his voice really modulated, when he came to advise us that they're increasing the non-tax income limit from to $84,000. That's fine. The property tax and so on would have eroded that if it's implemented well. But one of the things I didn't see, and I doubt I missed it because I was listening from the beginning, but by and large, there was no discussions on global trends. Absolutely none. And there are tremendous things are happening in the world today that will impact on us significantly in terms of availability of food, in terms of international inflation rate, in terms of the oil prices. And I don't think I heard any discussions on that, which is worrying, because you cannot prepare a national budget without being cognizant of international trends. The other assumption that I got from the minister's presentation was that COVID-19 will be resolved soon, and that may not be the case. I've listened and read the statements of prominent economists around the world, and they said the post-COVID period will be a very, very different period. The presentation gave me the impression that the minister assumed that everything will be resolved and we'll be back to normal. So let's put a pause on that and re-examine that assumption. The other assumption that the minister made is that banks have unlimited appetite to lend to government. There's no question with the reduction on the reserves to central bank, the local liquidity has increased. However, there are events in the banking sectors that are very, very worrying. And we saw a prominent citizen. He was actually chucked out of his house with probably every cent that he had under his pillow was thrown out in the yard. And that is just one sign of things to come. The banks are under severe pressure to perform, and they would have established a limit to lend to government. Government, of course, will twist their arm to make sure that they buy the bonds, because the banks are in a serious predicament. They're exposed to government, and if they don't lend anymore to government, if government really fails in terms of repayment of the bonds, then the value of the bonds on the bank's book will depreciate significantly. So they are in a catch-22 situation. Let's see how that plays out. The foreign banks will be different, because most of the foreign investment banks would have laid off they intermediated the bonds and they sold it out. So the appetite from the foreign banks will be very different than the local banks. They may invest in bonds out of a silent duress. So we need to examine the assumption that the minister made, that he can just go and borrow money as he will. The projected revenues, that's a serious concern to me, very, very serious. He's projecting $41.364 billion, up from $34 billion in the 2020 the budget, right? What they expect to receive. So that's a significant increase. That's $7 billion. He's not going to get it. He's not going to get it.
Yes. Okay, I want to cut you a little bit because we have Dr. Roger Hussein, economist. Dr.
Yes.
Roger Hussein is on the line, so we'll take him in right now.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Dr. Hussein, and welcome to U975 FM. Well, I have with me Dr. Botiwari, and I have a financial analyst, Ved Siram, in studio.
Yeah, hi, Roger. Hi.
Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Roger. What is your initial impression of the budget?
So, I did not listen to most of the budget. I had some other things doing, but what I did hear seems to me that it is aligned with the economic recovery document roadmap 2.
Yes.
And I found that the economic recovery document roadmap 2 had elements of the right type of response needed to counteract the sharp contraction in aggregate demand and aggregate supply. So my initial comment, and I will spend the night reading this document in great detail, is that it is a step in the right direction, and I heard some correct pronouncements of some things that I like. For example, I heard them mention that they are going to look at TNTech rates and electricity rates. And I think, again, whilst going to look does not mean immediate adjustment, I think that's the type of signal we need to send to the population in terms of this being a new normal. The increase in the taxable base, in the non-taxable base, I think from 72,000 to 84,000, I think I heard that. So that will help stimulate aggregate demand at the lower end, and aggregate demand at the lower end tends to go towards locally produced goods and services. So that in turn will help lock in the multiplier benefit for the economy, as is also in sync with the plans to stimulate domestic agricultural production. So I thought that made good sense. I think I heard where they said they would freeze public sector posts, and that's a step in the right direction, although at some point in time they would have to actively consider, once the economy starts the recovery process, to actually cut the number of workers in the public sector so that there is a reduction in the state wage bill. And it's either we do it or the IMF will come in and do it for us. There is also the property, which I strongly support, except that I think it should be done in a staged manner. I don't know that we should go with 100% implementation on residential properties. And I also think it should come with the attachment of how we are going to improve on the delivery of the services offered towards residential properties once we implement the tax. They also mentioned that the expenditure would be 49.6 billion, and I commend the minister. I mean, in a pandemic, to bring it down from 53 billion to 49.6 billion and revenues at 41.4 billion shows that the fiscal deficit would be somewhere about 8 billion, and if they raise some on capital revenues, they would have to borrow 7 billion. It means that our debt to GDP ratio will rise into the 80s for sure. What we have to be careful about is the US $45 assumed for oil prices and the US $3, if I remember correctly from what I heard, for gas prices, because if a second wave does emerge in the USA and other northern countries, as is expected from October to February, it could continue a damping effect on the global economy and by extension global commodity prices. So even $45 and particularly US $3 may be difficult to attain. And if that is the case, and I would look at these numbers closely tonight, Dr. Tiwari, if that is the case, then we may have overestimated revenues, and it's possible that the actual deficit could be about 10 billion, which would show our total debt to about 141 billion and push our debt to GDP ratio, and I'm making a quick evaluation here, to about 82.7%. So we would want to...
Yeah, he says it's 80 now.
Right, so that's where it will probably go at the end of August 2021, and that's again. So don't hold me to it. I will work for the total numbers later.
Roger, could I interject just for a second? You know the deficit, and they keep repeating this in the budget presentation. And they said, look, the deficit is 41 revenues, and 49 will be the expenditure, and the deficit is 8 billion. But that 8 billion is net of capital payments and sinking fund expenditures. And therefore, this is a major understatement of our deficit for many, many years, and you had to look in the figures, in the details to find out the true deficit. And in my estimate,
When I actually sit down and read it, I will go that. So
Please.
let's say it's actually 10.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can we say it's 10 billion?
the deficit, in my view, is over 16 billion as presented.
yeah, but he said just 8.2, and that is making the assumption that he did for revenue, which I find hard to justify as being accurate.
Okay, so my response to that would be, so I have to look at these numbers and interrogate them when I sit later.
Yeah, please,
What
thank
I
you.
would say to you is that either way we are in a pandemic, and I know that this year the fiscal situation is going to be rough. We all know that. We have a contraction in aggregate demand and a contraction in aggregate supply. Some of the things I did here, though, sounded more like a medium-term plan rather than a one-year budget installment.
Yes.
And I would have to see how the minister is going to deal with that. But there are three things I want to mention quickly to you all, Dr. Tiwari and team. One is I didn't hear any mention at all of the use of the Venezuelan labor workforce. Now, I
No,
could
he
be
did
wrong.
not. He did not address that.
Right, and I think that's a factor for advantage in order to stimulate aggregate supply in the short run and in the medium term. And it's about, I am getting here, I think it's about 60,000 workers. And you don't design a budget and have 60,000 immigrants in your country that adds to the labor force and ignore them. I think he has to adjust that. 60,000 is more than 10% of our actual labor force, employed labor force. It's a significant change, and it can be a game changer if properly interrogated. The second thing I didn't hear, and again, Dr. Tiwari, I didn't pay sufficient attention, and I will do that later, as I said, is ring-fencing the fiscal process by the introduction of fiscal responsibility legislation.
No, that issue did not arise.
Right, but to me, that's one of the main issues this country is facing, given that we have had fiscal deficits since 2009. And I therefore strongly advise the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Planning and the government to consider in the next 2 weeks while they debate the budget to find a way to start to speak about the need for fiscal responsibility legislation, because we cannot have an unbridled situation with our debt continuing to go up. And the third thing that I would like to see or didn't hear enough of is about non-energy export sector trade.
No, he did not address that. He talked about manufacturing and niche manufacturing, and he talked about linking agriculture with manufacturing. But he did not specifically address the issue of non-energy exports.
Right, and so those would be my three fundamental concerns. What I found was interesting is that he raised the taxable base, the non-taxable base from 72,000 to
84, yeah.
I think that was a smart move in the sense that he gave lower income people more flexibility, and lower income people, according to Engels' law, spend more money in the local economy based upon the kind of things they buy, and this is a generalization. So it would help with what he is trying to do there is to strengthen the domestic multiplier. I personally think, and I am a harsh critic of Minister Imbert, I personally think that this budget, what I heard so far, and I hope tonight when I sit and read it in detail, my opinion doesn't change, is the best budget I have heard Minister Imbert present of the 6 years done so far. But again, I put in the caveat that I need to read it in detail later.
Yeah, did you, earlier you were saying that the budget seems more like a medium-term plan than a one-shot annual budget. And one of the things that struck me, for the first time of any budget presented by Minister Imbert, he basically talked about agriculture and said, we are going to establish an incentivized agriculture sector, and then he outlined various things for the next 5 years. So I thought that that really provided something of security that could be a confidence builder for investment in the agricultural sector. I don't know if you heard that part and if you'd like to comment on it.
No, I didn't hear it, but if I were to assume that what you are saying is correct,
Yeah, that is correct.
I think then what Minister Ember did, given the short timeline that he had at his disposal, is he tried to interweave a budgetary comment with the economic recovery plan, which they seem to be using as part of their 5-year roadmap.
Yes.
And therefore, those type of statements were comforting. It is partly to crowd in private sector investment, given that the state is laying it out for 5 years what they are planning to do. And I think therefore that was an intelligent move.
Okay. All right, Roger, we'll talk to you another time,
Yes,
but
but
we
book me.
value your contribution and your insight.
You can book me, Dr. Tiwari, once you have space for at least 45 minutes after tonight when I read the budget.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
All right,
take
good.
care. All the best.
We
Okay,
can talk.
thank
Okay,
you.
take care.
Thanks a lot. All right. Vade, you want to say anything?
Please,
Maybe
I-
you can
I
call
will
this.
Yeah.
go again.
I'm saying
You want to
here,
call the next person?
You want to call the next person, or you want to add
Oh,
something?
no,
to
let
it?
Vade,
I-
let
I-
Vade
Yes.
continue.
I would
Yes.
really like all the economists and the people in the ministry to please explain what is our true deficit. Because the deficit, they're saying net of capital payments and sinking fund contribution.
Yes.
And I'm saying if those are zero, then it's fine. That is why is it that every year we present a lower deficit than we ought to? And I'm saying unless you get that piece of information right, then you cannot talk about financing and so on. And I have my concern is that they're budgeting an increase in revenues from 34 billion to 41, and I'm putting a question mark, and I'm saying that is not realistic in today's market. So therefore, our deficit may be growing to beyond 20 billion. Last year, I anticipated our deficit to be about 15 billion. So I have not been too wrong in the past. But I'm saying this has to be corrected. Otherwise, what are we discussing? If our revenues are overstated, our deficit is understated, then we have to get that sorted out. Otherwise, all other plans in the budget will come under stress.
Well, I think too, Roger raising the issue of fiscal prudence and bringing the issue of fiscal constraints and fiscal rules, I think is very important, because if you read this budget, at the end he comes and he gives you your $45 oil price, he gives you your $3 natural gas price. He then tells you the budget is the expenditure is $41 billion, a little over. And then he tells you that the deficit is 9.2 billion, and then he gives you the revenue figure. And when you hear the revenue figure and you look at the deficit, you begin to worry, because there's nothing in there that he's telling you, and there is nothing that he's showing you in terms of raising of revenue, because you have tax reliefs. You have some tax on VAT, but that is limited. That's related to the luxury sector. You have the property tax. We will anticipate that you'll get revenues from that, etc. But again, that will take some doing. And therefore, yes, the numbers at the end remain hanging. And therefore, the implementation issue with regard to all of these policies, which cannot be executed in a single year, become troublesome.
Okay, so it's 5:57. Are we going to go a little over 6 o'clock, or you all have to run?
I think we should talk to some more people.
Some more people?
Yes, yes.
All right, so we're going to take a short break while I call the next person that we have lined up, and we'll return after this.
Vendors and roti makers. Try our high quality unbleached bromate free all purpose and baker's flour. Low price and conveniently packaged in 2 pounds, 2 kg, 10 kg and 25 kg bags. For wholesale and retail prices, contact Shiklisha Limited 665-3336 or visit us at Warrenville, Canupia. Shiklisha Limited. Quality you can trust.
For quality items, visit Super Quality Supermarket of Endeavour Road, Chiguanas, and Trin City Industrial Estate in Trin City, as well as Quality Cash and Carry Supermarket, Cuba Car Park, for all your grocery items, liquor, fresh fruits, and vegetables, not forgetting their bed and bath section, and kitchen appliances for your home. With so many items to choose from, take advantage of our great prices and discounts at any of our 3 locations: Trin City Industrial Estate in Trin City, Endeavour Road, Chiguanas, and Cuba. For quality items, Super Quality Supermarket and Quality Cash and Carry Supermarket.
Gosh, boy, I can't wait to go home now.
Stuck in traffic again, Hare Babri.
Well, guess what? Your day is about to get hotter than ever in the afternoon. It's the new afternoon drive time program on U975 FM, Hot Like Pepper Multicultural Radio. Tune in Monday to Friday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. with yours truly, the DJ Flavia Experience. Let's make it hotter than ever in the afternoon. Great music, great info, and great vibes. Hotter than ever in the afternoon. Monday to Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. on U975 FM, Hot Like Pepper Multicultural Radio.
Call Riaz Ahmad now and see if he will talk.
Okay. Well, welcome back to our post-budget discussions here on U975, Hot Like Pepper Multicultural Radio, and we have been trying to reach some more persons to chat with us a little bit about the budget 2021, and have with me in studio former Government Minister Dr. Bo Tiwari and financial analyst Ved Siram. So they will continue their discussions while we try to reach someone else. Mr. Siram?
Yeah, I was just going through some assumptions that the Honorable Minister may have made, and I would question the deficit. That's extremely important. And then as far as I could see, there was no mention of the unemployment rate in Trinidad, and I think that's very worrying. I believe I heard everything he had to say, but the unemployment numbers are very, very important. Pre-COVID, reports have shown that the poverty levels are over 20%, and that's a huge amount. I suppose 20% of 1.4 million persons. And you could imagine the number after COVID or during COVID. And if we are going to build all these houses, it'll effectively be building houses for the unemployed. They would not be able to pay. And the housing institutions, they're going to run into a lot of problems. The banks are going to run into a lot of problems given the high level of unemployment. And I don't think that was adequately addressed in terms of job creation, but rather the strategy by government is to give incentives, and that will resolve the unemployment situation. And I don't think it will work, and that's a worrying sign to me. There was no real program presented in the budget for diversification. Two of the key variables for diversifying an economy is a realistic exchange rate. I don't think the minister mentioned anything about the exchange rate. Secondly, he was very silent on any negative listing or protection for the local agricultural industry. And I think those things are extremely important if we are to restructure this economy on a sustainable basis and to provide sustainable jobs for the citizens. So I have some concerns about it. and we can monitor it. Obviously, everyone will be monitoring what's happening, and I think the assumptions that went into the preparation of the budget were not realistic.
Okay, so we have one more guest on the line. Marlene Atz is joining us now. Dr. Tiwari, you can take over from here. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Arts. How are you?
Good afternoon, Dr. Tiwari. I am wonderful. How are you?
Good. Were you able to hear the entire budget?
I heard most of it, not all of it. I think I heard up until the allocation to the various ministries. Bits and bobs there.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a two-part question. What were some of the things you liked about the budget? And secondly, what were some of the things that troubled you?
Well, in terms of liking, I don't know that there's anything I like in particular, except the fact that the minister continues to recognize the position of the vulnerable. So some adjustments have been made with respect to and continue to be made with respect to the vulnerable. I think when I was driving, because I'm actually heading to the studio now, I heard about the Wi-Fi facility, etc., for students, and some adjustments being made to the tax net for persons who are earning $7,000 and less. So there are some positives inside of there, but even with those positives, I think I also picked up on my way getting ready to head into Port of Spain, the fact that the long-awaited, and I don't disagree with it, the long-awaited review of WASA and TNTech, their tariffs, that is going to bring about, that is probably going to result in some increase in the tariffs inside of there. And I think that is a good thing, because we have been enjoying rates, at a fairly low rate for several years. I think the last water rate was about 50 years ago or something to that order of magnitude. Now, having said that, there continues to be significant challenges in terms of the efficiency of supply from both WASA and from TNTech. But the minister, to his credit, said that the details will be coming out in the budget debates when the respective line ministers provide their detailed submissions and their presentations, so to speak. I also, in a sense, like the fact that there is some choreography around consumption and foreign exchange leakages. So while there will be fallout in terms of the car market, I think I heard on the broadcast that there is now going to be one revision in terms of the age of vehicles that can come into the country. So I think that is now down to 3 years.
Yes.
There is also going to be imported fruits such as things like strawberries and grapes and apples, which I wasn't aware they were not included under the VAT net previously. They're now going to be included under the VAT net, so those are going to fetch higher prices, which hopefully is going to deter consumption, but I think we've become so used to consuming those items that I'm not too sure how the consumers will actually respond to that. Then, of course, the sin tax, tobacco, some adjustments to those duties there, but again, because of, while the minister in his preamble spoke a lot about the health impact of tobacco, etc., we know that that is probably not going to have too much of an impact on the persons who are chain smokers and who need to have their cigarettes. So what we call in economics the inelasticity of demand. People probably are not going to be too jaded by that. In fact, they're probably reacting to that price increase by going to the nearest bar and stocking up, as it were. So those are some of the things on the one side. On the other side, in terms of the things that I wasn't particularly keen on. Now I have to say, Dr. Tiwari, that the budget, I'm looking forward to the budget debates and the presentation from the various ministers, because I think the budget lacked a level of detail that I would have seen in previous years. So, for example, we continue to talk about agriculture. That is welcome news. We continue to talk about agriculture. The allocation has been increased to just under 100% increase from what they got last year. I think they got 0.7 billion. I think they're into 1 point something billion this year. I forget the specific number, but it's an increase from last year. So
and there's another 500
precisely
million, yes.
Right, yes, another 500 million looking there. Now, the thing I am uncomfortable with in terms of the conversation around agriculture, while I continue, as I've always said, continue to think that agriculture is absolutely important for us in the economy in terms of taking the economy forward and not just dealing with the diversification issue, but dealing with the leakage of foreign exchange for imported food. And also, we needed to address the question of food security. I felt the conversation around agriculture was a siloed conversation as opposed to using this opportunity. One of the things my view is where we are in Trinidad and Tobago is that we're an intersecting space where we have to come up with creative ideas to deal with issues that can yield multiple dividends. So for me, while the minister spoke about youth, he spoke about agriculture, he spoke about some other issues, I felt that there was an opportunity for us to kind of collapse these conversations. So how about a conversation that says, I will enhance some of those paramilitary programs, the MyLAT and the MyPart programs, so that they can then contribute to the development of agricultural farms, etc. And I will also tie that into youth unemployment and dealing with at-risk youth. I think there was mention in the PNM manifesto about youth camps, etc., being given greater attention. And I felt if we're looking towards boosting agriculture and the agriculture sector in very short order, because there seems to be now some urgency because of the crisis in the energy sector. There seems to be some urgency, and I felt there was an opportunity for the minister to actually have some conversations around how we're going to roll out. Because remember, for many years we've been talking about agriculture and we've not actually been,
nothing has happened.
treating with it. So I'm saying now that we need to come up with a concrete plan, something other than simply saying that we're going to increase the allocation in the agricultural sector.
Well,
whether the allocation has been high, although we've really not had the kind of traction that one would expect to see and the kind of results.
Well, to be fair to the minister, he did say there's going to be a full incentivization of agriculture. It's going to be a tax-free business.
Yes.
And that this is going to last for the next 5 years.
Yes.
So basically, he insulated agriculture as a special project within the various sectors. Yes.
And I also think as well that there needed to be a conversation about the linkages, a greater conversation. He mentioned it in passing.
Linking
yes. To the tourism sector, for example. He said that, there would be industries to national security, the school feeding program, and something else he mentioned. There would be a kind of guaranteed purchase of agricultural produce for these sectors. And again, coming back to how you can create some alignment in terms of some of the major objectives. Why not, under the Ministry of National Security, have some of these agricultural programs, again, as I talk about the MyLAT and the MyPart programs and youth involvement, why not put some of those agricultural farms under the Ministry of National Security so that they can continue to do their work with the youth, but they can do it in this particular sector. So to me, that is an idea that might have been useful coming out of the budget presentation, as opposed to simply putting agriculture out there and saying that it's going to be fully incentivized. We've had the conversation about grants to the agriculture sector before, but many of the farmers and persons involved in agriculture have not capitalized on those grants because they complain that they're not seen as eligible for those grants because they don't have land tenure. So we come back to the conversation around land tenure. So while I appreciate the attention being given to agriculture and albeit a marginal increase in the allocation to the agricultural sector, I felt that the conversation could have been a more robust conversation. Maybe the Minister of Agriculture is going to have that robust conversation in his budget presentation. But certainly the headline. Another thing that I felt needed a conversation around was the issue of productivity. As the government revenues decline, as there continues to be sluggishness in the sector, we talked about manufacturing, we talked about construction. I think certainly those other sectors and certainly the public sector, and it's linked to the ease of doing business that he mentioned, there needs to be a conversation around enhanced productivity measures, because the economy is not simply going to pick itself up in short order in the way in which we would like it to pick itself up as for us to enjoy levels of economic growth that could actually create a more buoyant economy for Trinidad and Tobago. Excuse me, pardon. So I felt that it needed to be a conversation there. Another missing conversation I felt was around CPEP. In 2015, when the PNM government assumed office, there was a commitment to reforming the CPEP and the URB programs to again make them more productive and in contributing to the national landscape. Again, given where we are, the juncture where we are in Trinidad and Tobago, that to me was another missing conversation. But the minister choreographed and said that he can't cover everything in the presentation, and he would leave it to the line ministers. So I would wait to see whether there is any additional information coming out. And of course, I'm segueing between what I thought was good and bad as it comes back to my memory.
Sure.
Then of course, there's a conversation around the MiFi, making it available to students.
To kids,
Again, not a bad initiative. Once there are measures in place to ensure that the children who need to access these services are in fact the ones who are using it and they're not being used by parents or other persons in their household. I remember in April, former Minister Lovell Francis announcing that there were 60,000 children who were without access to online platforms or to tablets. So I don't know what sort of retrofitting, for want of a better word, has been done to allow these students to catch up. Because as a man who was involved in the education sector, you're aware that if you miss 6 months of schooling, it requires a different approach for you to catch up. So while the MiFi sounds like a good idea, there has to be measures in place to ensure that the persons who are intended to use the service and the use to which it is intended to be put is in fact what is going to happen. I knew back in April, May, June, I was doing some work with persons who had been not been able to access their education because of the transition from the face-to-face to online. So I knew there were challenges in terms of getting connectivity to persons certainly in rural Trinidad, etc., etc. The minister spoke about 80% Wi-Fi and smartphones and everything. So I knew there was a significant fallout. I don't know if the ministry has collected data to identify the extent to which they've been able to close that gap, so that, as the minister keeps saying, no person gets left behind, and all of those things sound, very, worthy. But I still am a little cautious in terms of the extent to which we've been able to close that gap to ensure that our children are in fact receiving the education that they're intended to receive and in a timely and regular manner.
Okay, well, it's been good talking with you, Dr. Marlene. I look forward to your other comments. I know you're on several different programs over the next week, but that is what happens when you know what you're talking about and when you're good. So
thank you very much for that.
All right, so take care. And we'll be in touch again, and thanks for talking with us, right?
Certainly, you're most welcome.
Okay then.
That's right. Bye-bye.
So, Vil, you were saying that you didn't think that there was much in the budget for having to do with diversification.
That's correct.
All right.
That's correct.
Now, he talked about digitization, he talked about agriculture, he talked about manufacturing. He didn't... I suspect you wanted some special interventions, right?
Yes.
All right, so at this time, just an announcement. The opposition leader is hosting a media conference from the parliament. I'm not sure what she's saying, however, we will bring you that detail in one of our newscasts right here on U975, Hot Like Pepper, Multicultural Radio.
Ved is responding on this diversification.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the diversification, there was no discussion on the exchange rate, and my position is very, very clear. You cannot diversify an economy with an overvalued currency. As hard as it is for everyone in the beginning, in fact, this should have been done years ago, so we could have adjusted to it and change the structure of our economy. So there's no digital to make the economy go into digitization and so on, is something that could happen in any case, but that is not a diversification. It's not a revenue generation in the world scale. And we have to decide, is that going to give us a competitive advantage, or do we have something to make it a competitive advantage for it to become a revenue earning industry? And I suspect it might be, potential is there, but it might be very small. With regards to diversification, I'm coming back again. What was lacking with regards to agriculture is, I thought it was a small pittance of 500 million. We have more money going after to secure ourselves from ourselves than going into productive use. There was really no specificity with regards to agro-processing. Government could have used some of that money, set up an agro-processing plant. They have the land available, and do it joint with the private sector and get things moving very quickly. To say throw incentives towards agriculture, they've been doing that for the last 40 years, and nothing has really happened. Just imagine, we are just less than 1% of GDP, which is nothing. So agriculture needs incentives, but it also needs protection. Barbados has made it very clear, no importation of cabbage, no importation of lettuce, no importation of tomatoes. That gives immediate protection to the local farmers. India has a program where they will say, I guarantee the purchase of all your produce in certain items on a fixed price. So those are the things that are missing with regards to an agricultural program from government.
Okay, we have Valmiki Arjun trying to reach us on the line here. We had called him earlier. So I will see if we can put him on. Valmiki, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Trying to call me now?
Yeah, we will call you instantly.
Okay.
Just hang up and we'll call you. Sorry, Ved, I take your point very clearly. I understand what you are after, and I understand what you are saying is missing in the minister's presentation. Okay, I appreciate that.
So we have Mr. Arjun on the line.
Dr. Arjun, Valmiki Arjun, financial economist at the University of the West Indies. Dr. Arjun, what is your, I have Ved Siriram in the studio with me, so both of us will ask you a couple of questions. And what I would start by asking you is, what is your general impression of the budget? What do you think is good about it, if you find anything? And what do you think is troubling about it?
Well, there's a couple of positive things. First thing is something I have actually been looking for since 2017.
Are we getting some?
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
There are a couple positive things from this particular budget that we can take away. The first thing that shocked me as positive is something I've been lobbying for since 2017, 2018, which is getting a private operator for the Port of Portland State.
Yes.
Being for many years, Port has been a very loss-making state, and when you look at what Jamaica has done, and even the Dominican Republic, from the time they got a private operator, especially Jamaica, they went in 1 year from being a loss-making state to earning profit, well over 24 million US dollars in profit in 1 year. Now, why are we in a loss-making state? Our port, first of all, is heavily overstaffed. The infrastructure in terms of the cranes and the trailers, etc., they're very old. They need serious upgrading, which is going to be very costly, and most importantly, the port needs to be shredded.
So you support that move with the port?
I think that's a positive step for the port. I do have certain reservations. I won't say small but important. But let me finish the point here. The port has not been dredged. It will cost about $900 million in total to dredge the port and also improve the infrastructure. Now, that being said, a private port operator wants to come on board in a partnership with the state could possibly provide the capital, because failure to dredge the port was to lose a lot of clients, shipping vessels, shipping lines coming out that these shipping vessels are so large, they cannot be accommodated here because we haven't dredged before. So hopefully if we dredge before, then we will be able to pull back these vessels, recapture the market share that we would have lost to Jamaica, which will in turn imply more shipping activity, greater revenue for the state, and of course more foreign exchange trading. When you look at what's happening with Guyana right now, shipping activities in Guyana would have obviously increased because of the surge in energy.
Energy, yes.
Yeah. So our port is they've started using it as a transshipment hub, but not to the extent as the potential could provide. If we dredge the port and improve the infrastructure there, we would reattract more of the transshipment activity. More shipping vessels will come to Port of Spain to offload whatever cargo they're shipping to Guyana, smaller vessels to go to Georgetown. The port in Georgetown, their infrastructure is actually worse than ours. They suffer from a siltation problem, a heavy siltation problem, and the currents there are very unpredictable. That means our port that gives us the ideal advantage that we should capitalize on now, because port activity in Guyana and even Venezuela going forward are not likely to be positive whatsoever. So that could certainly enhance activity in the maritime sector, and could help to take the maritime sector partially at least out of the shadow of oil and gas. Hello?
Yes, we're here. We're listening to you. So, Vade, do you want to follow up with anything?
Yeah, no, the Jamaican port is very peculiar, and I think a lot of the improvement in the Jamaican economy was due to the expansion and the revenue generated from the port, But Jamaican economy is very different to ours because they have, if you look at the exchange rate is one, and secondly, the difference between the very rich and the very poor, middle class, is still there, but it's certainly not large. And Guyana has the similar experience over the years where there was a dumbbell experience. The middle class has been wiped out, and you had the very poor and the very rich. And I think with regards to Trinidad, we had a very large middle class, which appears to be disappearing before our eyes. And so our economy, when I looked at the budget, I had serious problems with the numbers. I don't know, you being an economist could help us, because the revenue they said was 41 billion, 41.3 using rounded numbers, and 49 was the expenditure. And they said the deficit, Arjun, the deficit, they said $8 billion before the net of capital payments and sinking fund expenditures. And the question I have very simply, what is the value of the net capital payments and the sinking fund contributions? So we have to add that to the deficit, because if you look at this, has been a problem, persistent problem, which shows up in the rapid growth in our debt stock, and our actual debt is probably over $130 billion today. Yeah, hello. I don't know if you can help us with that.
You have a response to that,
what's our true deficit?
Dr. Arjun? You have a problem with the revenue numbers than the deficit?
The revenue numbers, I think, is overestimated.
Yeah, you think it's inflated, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's very inflated.
All right, so you have to leave us then.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll call back in a bit now.
All right then. Okay, you take care. Bye. Oh, we can't get Riaz, he's not answering. This guy from the U.
With a distinctive flavor, Umra Palka ghee is made from 100% pure vegetable oil. This Palka ghee is a delight when preparing all the sweet mix in all dishes for healthy cooking with a rich buttery taste and aroma. It is used for religious purposes and is the principal fuel for burning. Umra Palka ghee is light, pure, with real ghee texture. Distributed by Edward B. Bihari, Trinidad Limited, Uriah Butler Highway, Charlieville, Trinidad.
We shopping at Durban Supermarkets. Hey, come down. We'll value at Durban Supermarket. Shop now at Durban Supermarket. Come to Durban Supermarket. We got the best prices for your pockets. Get real value for your money. Durban Supermarket treats you like family. Nothing overpriced. It's guaranteed for sure. Save big at Durban and shop even more. Real value to Durban Supermarket. We got the best prices for your pockets. Take advantage of unbelievable deals at Durban Supermarket. Number 28 Foster Road in Sangre Grande. Durban Supermarket and Investment Limited. Giving you real value for your money.
Beauty.
And welcome back to the program, and we have on the line now the president of the Greater San Fernando Chamber of Industry and Commerce, Kiran Singh. Okay, so we seem to have some problems with the phone lines. Okay, I have to try him back.
Okay. Well, wait, maybe we can carry on. Go ahead. You try and get him. He's on? There also was the freeing up of the gas station market and the fuel.
Okay, we're supposed to have Kiran Singh back on the line. Dr. Tiwari, good afternoon, Mr. Singh.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Kiran. Sorry we took so long to get to you, but you know the minister spoke for 3 hours and 2 minutes, right?
That's okay, Dr. Tiwari.
So it was a long run. What is your impression? I mean, I know that you have been talking a lot about what is happening to the retail sector in San Fernando, what is happening to High Street, what is happening to San Fernando, the city town, and all of those things. Is there anything in the budget to make you hopeful?
Yes, so good evening to the listeners, first of all. What we think that was a step in the right direction for the minister this evening was to announce the increase in the non-taxable bracket for individuals from 72 to 84,000.
To 84,000. And you think that will influence spending and consumer?
Is welcomed by any increase in disposable income.
Yes.
And the smaller individual, the lower income brackets, they always tend to spend, especially on the streets and the downtown areas.
Yeah.
San Fernando has been languishing for some time, as you all know. The retail sector has been suffering. Even before the pandemic, there was a slowdown in economic activity. Rents, loans, mortgages continue to remain at a premium rate.
Yeah.
So the fact that we see an increase or decrease in the tax rate for the lower income individuals and households will see some level of economic mobility for those who are financially strapped at this time.
Okay. But the minister will have to get the economy to recover to create more jobs, no?
Of course.
For people to benefit from that 84,000.
Yeah, and what we have been championing the cause for is the to expedite the sale of the Petrotrin refinery.
Yes.
And we noticed that he did give on a date, a final date
October
of
31st, yeah.
And we hope that the government sticks to this date.
Yeah,
we could expedite this in as soon as manner as possible, because there are thousands of jobs that have been.
Yeah, I had contacted Ozzy Warwick, and he said he would speak to us, but we've been trying to get him on the phone. We didn't get him, and I thought he might be able to address that issue as well as the taxation issue tax relief issue that you are raising. You know, is there anything in the budget that you found? What can I say? That made you unhappy, and is there anything that was particularly pleasing?
Well, I wouldn't say unhappy, but with respect to the MSME sector, we noticed that he did talk about salary relief grant program to continue for the creative industries, the cultural industries until December 2020. I wasn't quite sure if he would have included the entire MSME sector, as it would have happened during the initial lockdown of the economy.
I don't think he mentioned that, but it's an important point. I think this is something that you should query with the minister. I mean, on behalf of your members, not just in San Fernando, but in the small chambers across the board. Because most of the SMEs are aligned to your small chambers, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Through the Confederation
of Regional Chambers, yes.
And we know that our sector represents the largest employer of workers after the government. And we have a tremendous responsibility to represent these workers who have been forced to stay at home, forced to go on rotation cycles of work.
Yeah.
And our sector has run out of savings.
Yes.
Overall, the minister, it was not a bad budget. It was, I think, on the surface, pretty good, considering all the challenges you have to deal with. But what is of critical importance to us is that we need some sort of financial assistance for the workers who we are responsible for, and we're unable to do it by ourselves. We really need the help of the government and the state agencies to help us through this next few months.
All right.
Yeah,
Kiran, go ahead.
Hi, Kiran. This is Ved. Just a quick question. You all have been keeping data on the number of employees that you all had to let go or within the San Fernando area?
We have some preliminary data, but you know, if you let go or lay off or furlough numbers of less than 5, there's no official need for you to report that.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because
but
you know
overall 50% layoff of workers within the southern region.
Right. So that's a large head count. And the question now, has the relief program been reaching them, or where does the
unfortunately, not everyone has benefited from the program. I know some members are still awaiting their distribution, so that we were hoping that the minister would have addressed that in his speech today. Maybe during the course of the debate, the Minister of Labour or another minister might pick up on that and give us some more information on that.
Because that relief was for 3 months. Am I right?
Yes, that is correct.
So they haven't received it. 6 months have gone, and so what hope do we have for a second round?
Well, we still have to advocate and push for that. That we want additional whatever we can get to assist us through the remainder of the period. We still have no cure for this virus, so it's going to be around for a long time.
That's right,
the small business sector is going to suffer, especially in the retail subsector of the economy.
Because if the employers, I'm sure they would be trying their best to keep their employees and the work going, but ultimately they'll say, look, I've reached a limit. I can't sell my house to maintain it.
Yeah, so we have been doing a rotation type basis where if you have 6 workers, you have 3 come on for 1 week, 3 are next week, and so on, just to keep them to be able to put food on their table.
Right, and the forbearance from the bank has expired at 3 months. So what's going to happen now? Are you all planning a strategy together to deal with the banks, or are you all going individually?
We
have through the Confederation been devising a policy strategy to approach the banks.
To approach the banks, yes.
Give us some consideration in terms of interest relief, credit card relief. The fact that it dropped by 3 percentage points is a drop in the bucket, literally.
3 percentage, that's 3% on the credit card?
On the credit card,
yeah, but they're making a huge spread on that to over 20% still. It just doesn't make sense.
Exactly.
It doesn't make sense, and central banks should get involved as well. And that's a global phenomena. That is a level of exploitation that you don't expect it in the 21st century.
We would have expected the banking sector as being part of the overall private sector, which are part of the profit-generating income stream in the economy, that they would have sacrificed together with the rest of
Well, they're the second government extracting taxes, and and they are out of control in the sense that the central bank is not giving proper direction with regards to fees and everything else, and it's free for all from the bank perspective, but it's affecting every consumer in Trinidad today. Well, good luck on that. Good luck on that.
Okay, Kiran, good to talk to you. We'll talk again another time.
Thanks again for the call.
And stay strong.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Stay strong, keep your business going, and help your other compatriots,
Definitely, of course.
All right, then.
Right, thank you, Kiran.
All the
Stay
best.
strong. Thanks.
Rajwal was just calling, but I think we have to close up now because you have huh? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you very much for listening. I'm Bo Tiwari, Boindradat Tiwari, and with me today was Ved Siriram. And as you know, Ved and I did two pre-budget.
We had three pre-budget discussions.
Yes,
One you were not here.
Yeah,
but
we had two budget consultation discussions together, and then Ved did one on his own, and we are doing this together now as post-budget.
Yes.
I think we're very early on the draw today because we got on the radio station right
Some
after.
immediate responses, which
That's
were really,
right.
really good. Different views from different persons.
Yes. So we thank you all for joining us and for listening. We thought that we might have been talking with you from about 3 to 6 p.m. and it's now 6:40 and we have other commitments. So I want to thank you very much for listening. We'll be on radio again, I am sure, and we will engage you. And I hope when we engage you that you will also engage us so that we can have a fruitful conversation. Our business when we do these things is really the good of the country, the development of the country, the interests of all stakeholders in the society, and basically we want good government, good governance, and we want positive policies that make a difference to the bread and butter and lives of the people who live here. Thank you very much for listening to us on 97.5 FM. Hot Like Pepper Radio.
Right. So before we toss over to Mukesh Baburam, because I know his callers have been calling him to find out what time he'll be coming on the air, I just want to, on behalf of the management and staff of U975 FM, thank you both for taking the time out from your busy schedule to come and join us here in studio for the past few weeks, and of course today for our budget discussions, pre and post budget discussions. And of course we look forward to hearing from you all on a regular basis, because we really appreciate the wealth of knowledge that you all were able to share with us and our listeners on U975 Hot Like Pepper Multicultural Radio. So thank you again to Mr. Ved Siram and Dr. Bo Tiwari for their time with us here on U975 Hot Like Pepper Multicultural Radio. And that's it for us with our post budget discussions here.
And thank you for being so gracious.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, listeners.
All right, you all have a great evening. And up next, Mukesh Baburam with Talk Your Talk.